Hi, so I saw a reference to this thing on Twitter a while ago and it just sort of got me a little bit curious. This is a little box from AliExpress which is designed for generating fake key presses on touchscreens, in particular phones. You can see what this is doing. This is just going through 1, 2. So whenever you see the 1, 2, you see these two buttons get activated. And I believe this is used for like game cheating and probably application testing and various other things. But I was just curious as to how they actually do this faking of button presses. So I thought it might be interesting to play around with. Now there's loads of functions, like you can get various sequences, randomization. I'm not sufficiently interested to go through all the functions. For example, this one is clicking at sort of programmable intervals, and say the previous one was doing sequencing. Chinese translation through Google Translate will give you sort of a rough idea, but it'll probably take a while to figure out all the various modes, and so I'm not particularly interested in doing that. I'm really more interested in figuring out how the actual hardware works. And one thing I was slightly surprised at is these use 4-pin jacks on there, so I was expecting either just like a power and ground or a power, ground and a signal, but there's 4 connections there. So and inside these there's just a little PCB. I've been messing around with this. There's a few wires soldered to it, and there's actually a LED on there which lights up when it presses, which is actually would be quite useful on these, but they put this in an opaque case so you can't actually see it, which isn't particularly useful. But I've traced out all the circuitry of this, so I'm just going to take a look at that. I was expecting to see sort of like some sort of pad or something in the bottom of the plastic case, and the plastic case has just got like a sort of foam pad on it. It's not conductive, it's just like a foam rubber pad. All that's actually on here is just 2 like pads on the edge. So if you just hold those pads sort of quite close to the buttons, you see that works. It's about, it needs to be almost touching when you're just holding these, but literally it's just the capacitance between these 2 pads and the screen. One thing I did find out when I was messing around, it does actually need both of these pads. A single pad won't do it. I was thinking it was maybe controlling some external capacitance or something there, but it definitely needs to have both of these connected. So let's have a look at the circuitry and figure out what it's doing. So this is the schematic, and it's actually sort of fairly straightforward. A and B are the 2 electrodes that go next to the touch button, and you can see on the left hand side Q4 and Q3 are an amplifier. So this is obviously detecting the scanning signal from the capacitive touch screen, and this then passes on to Q2 and Q1, which switch a + - 20 volt rail. So this is clearly taking the scanning signal and then producing a signal in sync with that at a fairly high level to capacitively couple back into the screen. So the screen thinks there's a finger there. If we take a look at the waveforms that this is producing, we'll look at the waveform at the output of Q3 and also the output of Q1, Q2, which will give a reasonable idea of what's happening. I think if we put a scope near at the beginning of Q4, I think the signal will be very low and be very hard to actually see, but we need to look at the amplified version after Q3. So this is the signal. The green at the top is the input, the output of Q3, and the bottom trace is the output, and these are 10:1 different voltage scale. So the bottom trace is 10 volts per division, so we can see it's taking the touchscreen signal. It's surprising it's actually inverting it. I'm a little bit surprised that it's not just giving it the same signal to sort of simulate the capacitance of a finger being close to it, but for some reason it's being inverted, but that seems to work. And so obviously as we get closer to the screen, the signal gets stronger. It'd be interesting to actually see how the the position of these electrodes relates to the actual detector position. So I've just soldered a couple of little wires onto here. So you can see here the output is this one here, but it does seem to depend on the orientation. So for example, if I turn that round, so it might be interesting to see how the electrode position relates to the actual detector position. So I just soldered a couple of wires onto this. This one here, this is the output. So here it's sort of the detector position is on the output, but that does depend on the orientation. So for example, now it's showing on the input. I think that probably also varies between the X and Y axes. So yeah, it's on the Y axis, it seems to be on the output, whereas on the X axis it appears to be on the input. And if we do a diagonal, it seems to be sort of in the middle, which is a little surprising because it's trying to detect the centre of a finger. So I'm a bit surprised it's not detecting like on the midpoint between those, but maybe that's just a function of the way that this is generating a signal to try and confuse the pad. But I mean, it does seem, you got sort of decent resolution. It's not, it does seem to be fairly effectively simulating a genuine input. So let's take a quick look inside this thing. I don't think it'll be particularly interesting. It's just going to be the microcontroller, the display, and the plus minus 20 volt power supply in there. So yeah, nothing too surprising here. We've got a little LiPo cell, USB charge circuitry, some sort of display driver, little 16-pin microcontroller, and there's just a little switching regulator here. There's a little 1206 inductor and some diodes producing the plus minus 20 volts. Obviously this is producing very, very low current, so just a very simple circuitry will produce that supply. So yeah, nothing at all exciting or surprising in here. So an odd little thing that I guess a lot of people probably didn't even know existed. Looking through all the listings on AliExpress, so if you just look up auto phone clicker on AliExpress, you'll see loads and loads of listings for this type of device. The vast majority of them seem to all be in Chinese, so this is, looks like it's some fairly China specific thing. If someone would care to elucidate on some of the use cases in the comments, I'd be quite interested to know, but not being into gaming particularly, I gather that's one of them. But so looking through some of the pictures on AliExpress, there seems to be a sort of variety of things that you could maybe try guessing about. But yeah, if you want to fake phone or other touchscreen button presses, that's how you do it.